in the vast expanse of the universe, where countless species coexisted across millions of star systems. There was a name that made even the bravest warriors tremble: the Void Reaper, known as Air in ancient texts. This creature had terrorized civilizations for centuries, leaving a trail of destruction that spanned entire galaxies. Tales of its ferocity were whispered in the darkest corners of space stations and taught to children as cautionary bedtime stories. No force, no technology, no army had ever managed to subdue this apex predator of the cosmos. On the small, unassuming planet of Terrova, located in a remote corner of the Milky Way, lived Lyra Callahan. Unlike most inhabitants of her peaceful world, who were content with their provincial lives, Lyra had always been fascinated by extraterrestrial biology. She had converted her modest home on the outskirts of New Haven, the planet's capital, into a sanctuary for injured alien wildlife. Her reputation as a skilled xenobiologist and compassionate caretaker had spread, albeit mainly within scientific circles and among those who shared her passion for conservation. The morning sun cast a golden glow over the lush, purple-leaved forests surrounding Lyra's home. She was attending to a wounded cerulean swift, a bird-like creature with 6 wings and crystalline feathers that caught the light and refracted it into mesmerizing patterns. The swift had been brought to her by a passing merchant who had found it trapped in his cargo hold. "There you go, little one," Lyra murmured, gently applying a regenerative salve to the creature's damaged wing membrane. "You'll be flying again in no time." The swift chirped appreciatively, its multifaceted eyes blinking in sequence. Lyra smiled, feeling the familiar satisfaction that came with helping another being. At 32 years old, she had dedicated over a decade to this work, and despite the occasional loneliness, she found fulfillment in it. Her communication device buzzed, displaying a holographic message from Dr. Ilara Voss, her former professor and mentor at the Terravan Institute of Xenobiology. "Lyra, I need your insight on a fascinating specimen we've encountered. When you have a moment, please review the attached data and call me." Lyra's curiosity piqued. Dr. Voss rarely reached out unless something truly extraordinary had crossed her path. She was about to access the attached files when a deafening boom shook her entire sanctuary. The swift fluttered in panic, and the other creatures in her care began making distressed sounds. "Easy, easy," she soothed, quickly moving to secure the most vulnerable specimens. Whatever had caused that noise, she needed to investigate. Grabbing her field kit and emergency medical supplies, Lyra stepped outside. Smoke rose from the forest about a kilometer away. Without hesitation, she activated her hoverbike and sped toward the disturbance, her heart racing with both apprehension and a scientist's curiosity. As she approached the site, the damage became evident. Trees had been flattened in a perfect circle, as if something massive had crash-landed. The air smelled of burnt vegetation and something else, something alien and distinctly metallic. Lyra slowed her hoverbike, proceeding with caution. In the center of the destruction lay a dark mass, partially obscured by smoke and debris. At first glance, it resembled a meteorite, but as Lyra drew closer, she could make out organic features. Whatever this was, it was alive, or had been, activating her bioscanner. Lyra approached cautiously. The readings made no sense. They kept fluctuating wildly, as if the creature's cellular structure was in a constant state of flux. One moment the scanner registered no life signs, the next it showed energy readings off the chart. "What are you?" she whispered, kneeling beside the mass. The smoke cleared slightly, revealing what appeared to be a large, predatory creature unlike anything she had ever encountered. Its body was covered in what looked like obsidian scales that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light. multiple limbs, some resembling claws, others more like tentacles, lay splayed around its torso. What Lyra assumed was the head had no discernible eyes, but featured a series of sensory pits that pulsed faintly with an internal bioluminescence. The creature was wounded severely. Gashes across its body revealed not blood but a viscous dark fluid that seemed to shimmer with stars, as if it contained fragments of the cosmos itself. More disturbing were the numerous energy weapon burns that marked its hide, indicating this was no natural disaster but the result of a deliberate attack. Lyra's trained eye could see the creature was dying. Despite its alien nature, the principles of triage applied. She reached for her medical kit, preparing to administer emergency care, when a voice behind her made her freeze. "Step away from that thing if you value your life." She turned to find a group of 5 humanoids in sleek, metallic armor approaching. Their helmets concealed their faces, but their postures conveyed aggression. Each carried advanced energy weapons, all pointed at the creature, and now, by proximity, at Lyra. "This creature is injured," Lyra stated firmly, not moving from her position. "I'm a xenobiologist. I can help it." The apparent leader stepped forward, the visor of their helmet retracting to reveal a scarred face with cybernetic implants around the eyes, the mark of a veteran space mercenary. "You have no idea what you're dealing with. Civilian. That's not just any creature, that's the Void Reaper. We've been hunting it across 3 star systems after it decimated an entire colony on Proxima 7th. Lyra's blood ran cold. The Void Reaper was no myth. Then, the stories she had dismissed as exaggeration suddenly felt all too real. She looked back at the wounded being before her. Could this really be the same entity that was said to have consumed stars and ended civilizations? "It's neutralized now," the mercenary continued. "We're here to finish the job. The Galactic Council has placed a bounty on it that would make you the richest person on this backwater planet. So move aside." Something stirred within Lyra, a mixture of scientific curiosity, compassion, and perhaps a touch of defiance. "No," she said, standing to face the mercenaries. "This is a living being, regardless of what it's done. On Terrova, we have laws protecting all forms of life. You can't just execute it." The mercenaries exchanged glances, clearly not expecting resistance. The leader's expression hardened. "Listen carefully. That thing has killed millions. It's not some stray pet you can nurse back to health. It's a plague on the galaxy. And we're the cure." "Then contact the Terravan authorities," Lyra challenged. "Let them decide." "We don't have time for bureaucracy," the mercenary snarled, raising their weapon. "Stand aside, or we'll consider you an accomplice." Before Lyra could respond, a low, resonant vibration emanated from the creature behind her. The mercenaries immediately tensed, weapons raised higher. Lyra turned to see the creature stirring, its form shifting slightly as if trying to change shape, but lacking the strength to do so. One of the mercenaries fired a warning shot that sizzled past Lyra's ear. "Last chance!" the leader shouted. In that moment, Lyra made a decision that would alter the course of her life and, unknown to her, the fate of the galaxy. She activated the emergency shield generator on her wrist, a standard safety device for xenobiologists working with potentially dangerous species. The translucent energy barrier expanded around her and the creature, just as the mercenaries opened fire. The shield wouldn't hold for long against military-grade weapons, but it gave Lyra precious seconds to act. She pulled out her communication device and sent an emergency signal to the Terravan Defense Force, including her location and a brief message. "Armed individuals threatening protected wildlife and civilian, immediate assistance required." The mercenaries continued their assault on the shield, which was already beginning to flicker. Lyra knew she had only one option. She activated the emergency teleportation module in her field kit, an expensive piece of equipment meant for evacuating injured specimens in critical condition. It had a limited range but should be enough to reach her sanctuary. "I'm sorry," she told the mercenaries, "but I can't let you kill an injured being without due process." Before they could respond, Lyra initiated the teleportation sequence. The last thing she saw was the leader's furious expression as both she and the creature dematerialized, leaving the mercenaries firing at empty air. The teleportation was rough. The device wasn't designed for something as massive as the Void Reaper. Lyra and the creature rematerialized in her sanctuary's main treatment area, the teleporter smoking and sparking before going completely dead. The emergency transport had overtaxed it beyond repair. Several of the smaller creatures in their enclosures began making distressed sounds at the sudden appearance of the predator. Lyra quickly moved to secure the most vulnerable specimens, transferring them to a separate, reinforced area of the sanctuary. Once they were safe, she returned to the Void Reaper. Up close and in better light, the creature was even more imposing. Despite its injuries, there was an undeniable majesty to it, the perfect amalgamation of predatory features from across the cosmos. Lyra estimated it to be about 4 meters long in its current, contracted state, though the legends spoke of it being able to grow to the size of small ships. "I don't know if you can understand me," Lyra said, approaching cautiously. "But I'm going to try to help you, and I'm not your enemy." The creature remained still, but Lyra sensed it was conscious and watching her, even without visible eyes. The sensory pits along what she assumed was its head pulsed with that strange cosmic light. Lyra's bioscanner was still giving erratic readings, but she could tell the creature's condition was critical. The dark, star-filled fluid, its blood, she presumed, was leaking from multiple wounds. The energy weapon burns had disrupted some kind of natural regenerative process, which explained why a creature of such legendary resilience was so severely injured. Drawing on her knowledge of xenobiology, Lyra prepared a broad-spectrum regenerative solution. Most complex organisms shared certain fundamental biological processes, and she hoped this would be true for the Void Reaper as well. As she approached with the prepared treatment, the creature tensed, its limbs twitching slightly. "Easy," Lyra murmured, using the same soothing tone she employed with all her patients. "This will help with the pain, at least," as she carefully applied the solution to the creature's wounds. She was startled when one of its tentacle-like appendages weakly wrapped around her wrist. Fear spiked through her. But the grip wasn't threatening, if anything. It seemed exploratory. A strange sensation flooded Lyra's mind. Not quite telepathy, but something similar. Impressions rather than words. Curiosity. Confusion. And beneath it all, a profound sense of pain that went beyond the physical injuries. Then, as quickly as it had come, the sensation faded, and the tentacle released her. "You're sentient," Lyra whispered, awed by the realization. "Highly sentient." The treatment seemed to be having some effect. The flow of the cosmic blood had slowed, and some of the smaller wounds were already beginning to close. Encouraged, Lyra continued her work, speaking softly as she did. "Those mercenaries called you the Void Reaper. They said you destroyed a colony." She paused, looking at the creature's sensory pits, which pulsed in response to her voice. "But I wonder if there's more to that story." The Void Reaper made no response that Lyra could interpret, but she felt a subtle shift in the air around them, as if the creature was contemplating her words. Lyra worked through the night, applying treatments, monitoring the creature's condition, and researching what little information was available about the legendary Void Reaper. Most of what she found was terrifying, accounts of entire planets left barren, space fleets vanishing without a trace, and sightings that coincided with cosmic anomalies. If even a fraction of these accounts were true, she was harboring the most dangerous being in the known galaxy. Yet, as she observed the creature slowly recovering under her care, Lyra couldn't reconcile those stories with the being before her. Yes, it was clearly a predator of immense power, but there was an intelligence in its responses to her, a deliberateness that suggested more than mindless destruction. By morning, the creature had stabilized. Some of its wounds had begun to heal at an accelerated rate, confirming Lyra's theory that it possessed remarkable regenerative abilities when not countered by specialized weapons. She had just finished changing the dressings on the most severe injuries when her security system alerted her to approaching vehicles. Through the surveillance feed, Lyra saw 3 official Terrorized Defense Force shuttles landing outside her sanctuary. Dozens of armed officers disembarked, led by a stern-looking woman in the uniform of a TDF commander. Lyra's heart sank. The mercenaries must have reported her to the authorities. She quickly checked on the Void Reaper, which had become more alert as its condition improved. The sensory pits were pulsing rapidly, suggesting it was aware of the potential threat. "Stay calm," Lyra told it, unsure if the creature could truly understand her. "I'll handle this." She went to meet the TDF at her door, composing herself to appear confident despite the gravity of the situation. The commander stepped forward as Lyra opened the door. "Lyra Callahan?" the commander asked, her expression severe. "Yes, that's me. I'm Commander Sarah Valdez of the Terrorized Defense Force. We received reports of an incident involving armed off-worlders and a dangerous extraterrestrial entity. We're here to investigate and secure any potential threats." Lyra nodded, trying to appear cooperative. "There was an incident. A group of mercenaries was attempting to kill an injured creature that had crash-landed in the forest near my home. I intervened, as is my right under Terrorized conservation laws." Commander Valdez's eyes narrowed. "Ms. Callahan, we've received intelligence suggesting the creature you're harboring is the entity known as the Void Reaper. Are you aware of what that means?" "I've heard the stories," Lyra admitted. "But I'm a scientist, Commander. I don't make judgments based on legends and hearsay. What I know is that I found an injured sentient being that was about to be executed without trial or consideration." "Noble sentiments," Valdez replied, though her tone suggested she thought otherwise. "However, if this is indeed the Void Reaper, it represents a clear and present danger to Terrova and its people. We need to secure it immediately." "It's injured and under my care," Lyra stated firmly. "Under Section 7 of the Terrorized Wildlife Protection Act, any sentient being receiving medical treatment is entitled to complete that treatment before any legal proceedings can begin." Commander Valdez looked surprised, clearly not expecting Lyra to be so well versed in Terrorized law. "That act was written with local wildlife in mind, not interstellar threats. The law makes no such distinction," Lyra countered. "All sentient life is protected equally under Terrorized law. You can verify this with your legal advisors if necessary." A muscle twitched in Valdez's jaw, but she maintained her composure. "Very well. We'll establish a perimeter around your sanctuary while I consult with our legal department. But be aware, Ms. Callahan, that if this creature poses any threat or shows any sign of aggression, we will act immediately to neutralize it." "Understood," Lyra agreed, "but I assure you it has shown no aggression toward me." "Let's hope it stays that way," Valdez said grimly, "for all our sakes," as the commander returned to her troops to issue orders. Lyra closed the door and leaned against it, exhaling slowly. She had bought some time, but she knew this was just the beginning. Once word spread that the Void Reaper was on Terrova, more than just local authorities would come calling. She returned to the treatment area to find the creature more active than before. It had shifted position, its form seeming more cohesive and defined. The sensory pits tracked her as she entered, and she felt that strange mental impression again. Stronger this time, curiosity, assessment, and something new, gratitude. They want to take you away, Lyra told it, approaching slowly. They're afraid of you, of what the stories say you've done. The creature's response came not in words, but in a series of impressions that flooded Lyra's mind. Images of vast, empty space, of hunger that transcended physical need, of civilizations that attacked on sight, of defensive reactions that spiraled into destruction. It was communicating through emotional imprints and memory fragments. But the message was clear. There were two sides to the story of the Void Reaper. You were defending yourself, Lyra realized, kneeling beside the creature. All those destroyed worlds, they attacked you first? The impression that came back was more nuanced. Not all had attacked, but many had. Fear had led to aggression, aggression to retaliation, retaliation to more fear. A cycle as old as life itself, and beneath it all, a profound sense of isolation that resonated within Lyra's own solitary heart. You're alone, she whispered. The only one of your kind. The creature's sensory pits dimmed slightly in what Lyra interpreted as confirmation. A plan began to form in Lyra's mind. If she could establish proper communication with the Void Reaper, if she could show the authorities that it was sentient and capable of peaceful interaction, perhaps she could change the narrative. It wouldn't be easy, and the risk was enormous. But the scientific and ethical implications were too significant to ignore. I'm going to help you, she decided. Not just to heal your body, but to tell your story. But I need to call you something besides the Void Reaper. That name carries too much fear. The creature pulsed its sensory pits in a pattern that suggested attention. The mercenaries mentioned a name from ancient texts. Air, is that what you call yourself? The creature's response was warm, almost pleased. The name wasn't exact, but it was close enough to the sound impression it associated with itself. Air it is, then, Lyra smiled. Now, let's see if we can convince the rest of the galaxy that you're more than just a monster from their nightmares. Over the next few days, as Air's condition steadily improved, Lyra worked tirelessly on two fronts. First, she continued to treat Air's remaining injuries, which were healing at an astonishing rate now that the energy weapon effects were wearing off. Second, she documented everything about their interactions, collecting irrefutable evidence of Air's intelligence and non-aggressive nature. The TDF maintained their perimeter around the sanctuary, but after consulting with legal experts, Commander Valdez had grudgingly acknowledged Lyra's right to complete Air's treatment. However, she made it clear that once Air was healed, the creature would be placed in military containment pending a decision from the Galactic Council. Lyra knew that outcome would be disastrous. The Council, dominated by species that had suffered from Air's past destructions, would likely vote for execution or permanent imprisonment. She needed to change the narrative before then. On the fourth day, as Lyra was documenting Air's rapidly evolving communication abilities, her communication device chimed with an incoming call from Dr. Voss. With everything that had happened, Lyra had completely forgotten about her mentor's earlier message. "Lyra, thank the stars you're alive," Dr. Voss exclaimed when Lyra answered. "The entire scientific community is talking about what's happening at your sanctuary. Now, is it true? Do you really have the Void Reaper?" "Hello, Dr. Voss," Lyra replied, keeping her voice low even though Air could undoubtedly hear her. Yes, I'm caring for a creature that matches the descriptions of the entity known as the Void Reaper. But there's so much more to the story than anyone realizes. Dr. Voss's expression was a mixture of concern and scientific excitement. Lyra, do you have any idea how dangerous this situation is? The Galactic Council has convened an emergency session to discuss the Terravan situation. There are rumors that some species are preparing military action if Terova doesn't turn over the creature. Lyra felt a chill run down her spine. Military action? They would attack an entire planet? The Arcturians lost 3 colony worlds to the Void Reaper 2 centuries ago. The Marins claim it consumed their original home star. These species have long memories and little forgiveness. Dr. Voss explained. But I didn't call to frighten you. I called because I want to help. How? Lyra asked, hope rising despite the grim news. I've been studying xenobiological communication for decades, as you well know. If what you say is true, if this creature is truly sentient and misunderstood, then we need to establish clear, documented communication with it. Something that even the Council can't dismiss. That's exactly what I've been trying to do. Lyra admitted. Air, that's what I've been calling it, communicates through some kind of empathic impression. I can understand generally what it's trying to convey, but it's subjective. I can't record it or present it as evidence. Empathic impression? Dr. Voss's eyes widened with interest. That's consistent with reports from the few survivors of Void Reaper encounters. They often described sensing emotions or images before the attacks began. She paused, thinking. I have a prototype neural interface that might help. It was designed to translate the chemical communication of the mycelial collective into something humans can understand. With some modifications, it might work for empathic impressions as well. That could be exactly what we need, Lyra said, feeling a surge of hope. But the TDF has the sanctuary surrounded. I don't know if they'll let you through. Leave that to me, Dr. Voss said with a determined smile. I still have some influence in government circles. Expect me tomorrow. True to her word, Dr. Voss arrived the next day, escorted by TDF officers who seemed reluctant but compliant. She brought with her a large case of equipment and a quiet resolve that immediately put Lyra at ease. When Dr. Voss first laid eyes on Air, she stopped in her tracks, momentarily overwhelmed by the creature's presence. Air had recovered significantly, its obsidian scales now gleaming with a subtle iridescence, its form more defined and purposeful. The sensory pits pulsed with a steady, calm rhythm as it observed the newcomer. Extraordinary, Dr. Voss whispered. In all my years. She collected herself and approached slowly, showing Air the same respect she would any sentient being. Hello, Air. My name is Dr. Alara Voss. I'm a friend of Lyra's, and I'm here to help facilitate communication between you and us. Air's response was a gentle pulse of light from its sensory pits, which Dr. Voss couldn't interpret but Lyra recognized as curiosity and cautious acceptance. It's okay, Lyra assured Air. Dr. Voss is the one who taught me everything I know about xenobiology. If anyone can help us communicate more clearly, it's her. Dr. Voss unpacked her equipment, explaining each component to both Lyra and Air as she did. The neural interface works by detecting and amplifying subtle electromagnetic patterns associated with thought processes. Most sentient species generate such patterns, though the specific frequencies and amplitudes vary widely. She held up a sleek, crescent-shaped device. This will not harm you. Air. It simply rests near your sensory organs, or what we presume are your sensory organs, and reads the patterns. The translation algorithms will attempt to convert those patterns into language or, at minimum, coherent concepts that we can record and understand. Air seemed to consider this before extending one of its tendril-like appendages toward the device, a gesture that Dr. Voss interpreted correctly as permission to proceed. With careful movements, she positioned the interface near Air's pulsing sensory pits. The device hummed softly as it calibrated, lights along its surface changing color as it detected and analyzed Air's electromagnetic signatures. "Now," Dr. Voss said, activating a holographic display. "Let's see if we can establish a baseline. Air, could you try to convey a simple concept? Perhaps gratitude toward Lyra for her care?" Air's sensory pits glowed brighter, and the interface's display flickered with activity. Patterns formed, dissolved, and reformed as the algorithms worked to interpret the signals. Finally, words began to appear on the screen. Lyra, save, life, gratitude, debt. The words were simple, almost primitive, but the meaning was clear. Lyra felt tears forming in her eyes. This was the first concrete proof that Air was not only sentient but capable of concepts like gratitude and obligation. "It's working," she breathed. Dr. Voss nodded, her own expression one of wonder. "This is just the beginning. The interface will learn and adapt, becoming more sophisticated as it gathers more data on Air's communication patterns." Over the next several hours, they worked with Air to refine the translation. Gradually, the interface's output became more nuanced, transitioning from single words to simple sentences and eventually to more complex expressions. By evening, they had established a functional, if basic, means of communication. Through this newfound dialogue, Lyra and Dr. Voss began to piece together Air's story. The creature was indeed ancient, having traversed the cosmos for millennia. It was not, as legends claimed, a harbinger of destruction or a malevolent entity. Rather, it was a solitary explorer, the last of a species that had evolved in the space between stars, feeding on energy from stellar phenomena rather than organic matter. "I do not consume worlds," Air communicated through the interface. "I feed on stellar emissions, cosmic radiation, but my presence disrupts. Technology fails. Atmospheres react. I do not intend harm." "But the destroyed colonies," Lyra prompted gently. "The mercenaries mentioned Proxima 7. Air's response came slowly, the sensory pits dimming as if in sorrow. "Attacked, hunted, weapons that cause pain. I defend. Sometimes, defense causes more damage than intended." "Self-defense," Dr. Voss murmured. "Just as you theorized, Lyra." "And the home stars of some species?" Lyra asked. "The Marins claim you consumed their original sun." "False," Air communicated. "Stars die naturally. My kind once shepherded dying stars, guided their energy, prevented nova explosions. Marin's star was already dying. I tried to help, failed. They blamed." The picture that emerged was both tragic and enlightening. Air's species had once been caretakers of cosmic phenomena, using their unique biology to interact with and sometimes stabilize dangerous stellar events. But misunderstandings, fear, and occasional genuine conflicts had led to their near extinction. Air, as far as it knew, was the last. "This changes everything," Lyra said, looking at Dr. Voss. "If we can present this evidence to the Galactic Council." "It won't be that simple," Dr. Voss cautioned. "Centuries of fear and hatred can't be erased with a single conversation, but yes, this is a start." Their discussion was interrupted by an alert from the sanctuary's security system. Commander Valdez was approaching, accompanied by several high-ranking TDF officers and what appeared to be civilian officials. "Stay with Air," Lyra told Dr. Voss. "Keep recording everything. We need as much evidence as possible." She went to meet the delegation, her determination bolstered by the revelations of the day. Commander Valdez's expression was grimmer than ever, and Lyra immediately sensed that something had changed. "Ms. Callahan," Valdez began without preamble. "I'm here with representatives from the Terrorized Planetary Council. The situation has escalated." One of the civilians, an older man with the insignia of the council president, stepped forward. "Ms. Callahan, I'm President Thomas Reeves. The Galactic Council has issued an ultimatum. Either we surrender the entity known as the Void Reaper for interstellar tribunal, or they will consider Terrova to be harboring a known threat to galactic security. That's diplomatic language for they'll attack our planet," Commander Valdez added bluntly. Lyra felt her heart sink, but she stood her ground. "President Reeves, Commander, with all due respect, the situation is not what it appears. We've established communication with Air, the being you call the Void Reaper, and what we've learned changes everything we thought we knew." "Communication?" President Reeves looked skeptical. "Yes," Lyra affirmed. "Dr. Alara Voss, the foremost expert in xenobiological communication, is with Air now. We've documented proof of sentience, of peaceful intent, and of centuries of misunderstandings that led to the myths surrounding this being." "Ms. Callahan," Valdez said, her tone softening slightly, "I understand your scientific interest and your compassion, but you're asking us to risk our entire planet on your interpretation of this creature's intentions. I'm asking you to look at the evidence before condemning a sentient being," Lyra countered. "Isn't that the foundation of Terravan justice? Evidence, facts, truth, not fear and hearsay?" President Reeves exchanged glances with his advisors before responding. "Very well. We will review your evidence. But be aware that the Galactic Council has given us only 48 hours to comply with their demand. The clock is ticking." "Ms. Callahan." "I thank you, President," Lyra said, genuinely grateful for even this small concession. "Please come inside and see for yourselves." She led the delegation into the sanctuary, hoping that meeting Air face-to-face would help dispel some of the fear surrounding the creature. As they entered the main treatment area, she was encouraged to see Dr. Voss and Air engaged in what appeared to be a peaceful exchange, with the neural interface displaying a complex conversation about cosmic phenomena. The officials stopped abruptly, their expressions ranging from fear to awe as they beheld Air in its full, recovered glory. The creature had grown even more magnificent as its health returned, its obsidian scales now reflecting a cosmos of tiny lights, as if the stars themselves were captured in its skin. The sensory pits pulsed gently, acknowledging the newcomers without alarm. "President Reeves, Commander Valdez," Lyra said, gesturing toward Air. "This is Air, the being some call the Void Reaper. Air, these are leaders of the planet Terrova." Through the neural interface, Air's response appeared. "Greetings, leaders of Terrova. Your world is beautiful. Your inhabitant Lyra has shown kindness where others have shown only fear and weapons." President Reeves's eyes widened at the direct communication. It speaks?" "Air communicates," Dr. Voss corrected gently. "The neural interface translates empathic impressions into language we can understand. It's not perfect, but it's effective." "And what has it told you?" Commander Valdez asked, her hand still resting on her weapon, though her posture had relaxed slightly. Dr. Voss activated a holographic display showing hours of recorded conversations. Everything from astronomical observations to philosophical discussions about the nature of existence. Air's species once helped stabilize dying stars, preventing supernovae that would have destroyed entire systems. The destructions attributed to Air were largely misunderstandings or defensive reactions to being attacked. "Convenient explanations," one of Valdez's officers muttered. "Verifiable facts," Dr. Voss countered. Air has provided stellar coordinates and time frames that match historical records of stellar phenomena. We've cross-referenced several already. President Reeves approached the neural interface, studying the displayed conversation with a thoughtful expression. Even if all this is true, the Galactic Council's position is clear. Many member species have grievances against this entity that span centuries. Then give us a chance to present our findings, Lyra urged. Let Dr. Voss and I address the Council directly, with Air's testimony. If they still vote for prosecution after hearing all the facts, at least justice will have been served. The President and Commander exchanged looks, silently deliberating. Finally, President Reeves nodded. I will request an emergency hearing. The Council may grant it, given the unusual circumstances. But I must warn you, Ms. Callahan, that many Council members have already made up their minds. All we ask is a fair hearing, Lyra said, feeling a surge of hope despite the daunting odds. Very well, President Reeves agreed. Commander Valdez will arrange secure transport to the Galactic Council headquarters. I suggest you prepare your case carefully. You'll be facing species with very long memories and very little forgiveness. As the delegation departed, promising to return the next day with details of the hearing, Lyra turned to Dr. Voss and Air with a mixture of determination and apprehension. Well, she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. We have our chance. Now we just need to convince the most powerful governing body in the galaxy that everything they believe about the Void Reaper is wrong. No pressure, Dr. Voss replied with a wry smile. Air's response appeared on the interface. I will face judgment. You have risked much for me. Lyra, I will not bring destruction to your world. The simple statement touched Lyra deeply. We're in this together. Air. We'll tell your story, the true story, and hope that truth is enough. The journey to the Galactic Council headquarters on the neutral space station Concordia was tense, but uneventful. Air had voluntarily allowed itself to be contained within a specialized transport vessel, designed by Dr. Voss to accommodate its unique biology while ensuring the safety of the crew. The neural interface had been refined further, allowing for more natural communication. And Lyra had spent the entire journey working with Air to prepare for the hearing. Concordia Station was a marvel of interspecies engineering, a massive structure rotating gently in the void between major star systems. Its central chamber, where the Council convened, could accommodate representatives from over 200 species, with environmental controls that could shift from methane atmospheres to liquid nitrogen baths in adjacent sectors. As Lyra, Dr. Voss, and the contained Air were escorted into the antechamber, they could sense the tension throughout the station. News of the Void Reaper's capture and impending hearing had spread throughout the galaxy, and many representatives had arrived specifically for this historic event. Commander Valdez, who had accompanied them as Tarova's security liaison, approached with an update. The chamber is full, she reported. Every council member is present, some who haven't attended a session in decades. This is unprecedented. Good, Lyra said, trying to sound confident. That means everyone who needs to hear the truth will be present. There's something else, Valdez added, her expression grave. The mercenaries who attacked Air initially are here. They're claiming the right of testimony as the injured parties in the Proxima 7 incident. Lyra's heart sank. The mercenaries would undoubtedly paint Air in the worst possible light. Can we challenge their credibility? Not easily, Dr. Voss interjected. Under council law, all parties with direct experience of the accused have the right to testify. But this works both ways. Air can also testify about its experiences with them, before they could discuss further. A chime sounded, indicating the hearing was about to begin. steeling herself. Lyra nodded to the technicians who would guide Air's containment vessel into the chamber. The Galactic Council chamber was a vast amphitheater, with concentric rings of platforms accommodating the diverse representatives. Some floated in anti-gravity fields, others were submerged in specialized tanks, and still others perched on structures that resembled nests or hives. At the center was a raised dais where the Council Arbiter, a respected neutral entity chosen for their impartiality, would preside, as Lyra, Dr. Voss, and Air's containment vessel took their position on the testimony platform. A hush fell over the assembly. The Arbiter, a tall crystalline being known as a Luminar, whose kind were renowned for their analytical minds and unwavering fairness, activated the chamber's universal translation field. This emergency session of the Galactic Council is now in session, the Arbiter announced, their voice resonating through the translation field in every language simultaneously. We are gathered to address the matter of the entity known historically as the Void Reaper, currently identified as Air, and to determine the appropriate response to its capture. The Arbiter's faceted eyes turned toward Lyra and Dr. Voss. The being in question was secured by Terravan citizen Lyra Callahan, who, along with Dr. Alara Voss of the Terravan Institute of Xenobiology, has requested this hearing to present new evidence regarding the nature and actions of the entity. As is council custom, we will hear all testimony before deliberating. A representative from the Arcturian hegemony immediately rose, their chitinous exoskeleton clicking with agitation. Arbiter, I must protest. This creature has terrorized the cosmos for centuries. My people lost 3 colony worlds to its depredations. What possible testimony could mitigate such destruction? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber, particularly from species known to have historical grievances against the Void Reaper. The Arbiter raised a crystalline hand for silence. Council Member Xar, your objection is noted, but procedural law is clear. All beings, even those accused of the gravest crimes, are entitled to present evidence in their defense. The Terravan representatives will be heard. With that, the Arbiter gestured for Lyra to begin. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward, acutely aware that the fate of both Air and potentially her home planet rested on what she said next. Honored Arbiter, esteemed council members, she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. I stand before you not to deny that the being known as Air has been involved in destructive events throughout galactic history, but to provide context and understanding that has been missing from the narrative for centuries. She activated a holographic display showing the neural interface's translations of her conversations with Air. Through advanced communication technology developed by Dr. Voss, we have established meaningful dialogue with Air. What we've learned challenges everything we thought we knew about the entity called the Void Reaper. For the next hour, Lyra and Dr. Voss presented their findings methodically, supported by data, historical cross-references, and direct translations of Air's own testimony. They explained Air's nature as an energy-based life form that fed on stellar radiation, not organic life or planetary resources. They detailed how its species had once helped stabilize dying stars, preventing catastrophic supernova, and most importantly, they showed evidence that many of the destructions attributed to Air had been either natural cosmic phenomena misattributed to its presence or defensive reactions to being attacked. In essence, Lyra concluded, Air is the last of a species that once served as caretakers of cosmic phenomena. The misunderstandings and fear that led to its persecution have created a cycle of violence that has claimed lives on all sides. But this cycle can end here, today, with understanding and truth. The chamber was silent as Lyra finished. Even the most skeptical council members appeared thoughtful, if not entirely convinced. The arbiter nodded in acknowledgement of their presentation before turning to the other side of the chamber. We will now hear from those with grievances against the entity known as Air. The mercenary leader whom Lyra had confronted in the forest stepped forward, his cybernetic implants gleaming under the chamber's lights. Honored Arbiter, my name is Krell, commander of the Proxima Defense Corps. I represent the survivors of the Proxima 7 colony, which was decimated by this creature just 3 standard months ago. Krell activated his own holographic display, showing devastating images of a colony in ruins. These are not ancient history or misunderstandings. These are recent atrocities committed by the being these Terravans are so eager to defend. He proceeded to give a graphic account of the destruction, describing how the Void Reaper had appeared without warning and unleashed havoc on the colony, killing hundreds before the defense forces could respond. Lyra listened with growing dismay. The destruction was real, but Krell's account contradicted everything Air had told her about the incident. When Krell finished, she requested the right to cross-examine, which the Arbiter granted. Commander Krell, Lyra began. In your account, you stated that Air attacked without provocation. Yet our communications with Air indicate that your forces fired first, using specialized energy weapons designed specifically to harm its kind. Is this correct? Krell's expression hardened. We deployed defensive measures against a known threat. So you fired first, Lyra pressed, before any hostile action from Air. We protected our colony, Krell insisted, avoiding a direct answer. Lyra turned to the council. With the Arbiter's permission, I request that Air be allowed to present its own account of these events directly. After a brief consultation with other council members, the Arbiter agreed. The neural interface was connected to the chamber's communication systems, allowing Air's translated thoughts to be heard by all present. I did not go to Proxima 7 to attack. Air's translated voice resonated through the chamber. I was drawn by the star. It was exhibiting early signs of instability. My kind once helped stabilize such phenomena. I approached to observe, perhaps to help if possible. The sensory pits on Air's partially visible form pulsed with emotion as it continued. The colony detected my approach. Instead of communication, they launched weapons that cause intense pain to my kind. I reacted defensively, trying to neutralize the sources of attack. I regret the destruction and loss of life, but I did not initiate violence. The chamber erupted in discussion, with representatives debating the conflicting accounts. The Arbiter called for order before addressing Krell directly. Hey, Commander, did your forces deploy weapons before attempting communication with the approaching entity? Krell hesitated, aware that his answer would significantly impact the proceedings. We followed standard protocol for Class Alpha threats. The Void Reaper's reputation precluded diplomatic approaches. So no attempt at communication was made, the Arbiter clarified. No, Krell admitted reluctantly. This revelation shifted the mood in the chamber. Several representatives who had been openly hostile to Air now appeared more contemplative. The Arcturian representative, who had objected earlier, requested the floor. Honored Arbiter, while the recent events at Proxima 7 may be cast in a new light by this testimony, the historical destructions attributed to this entity remain numerous and devastating. How do we reconcile centuries of consistent reports with this new narrative? It was Dr. Voss who answered. Council Member Kazar, we've analyzed historical records of encounters with the being called the Void Reaper and found a consistent pattern. In nearly every documented case where sufficient detail exists, the sequence begins with detection, followed immediately by military response, followed by destruction. The missing element in these accounts is any attempt at communication or peaceful contact. She displayed a timeline of known Void Reaper incidents, color-coded to show this pattern. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. The entity is feared, so it is attacked on sight, so it defends itself, causing destruction that reinforces the fear. The cycle continues, century after century. The council chamber grew quiet as representatives contemplated this perspective. The arbiter allowed more testimony from both sides, but it became increasingly clear that a shift was occurring in how many viewed the situation. After all testimony had been presented, the arbiter called for deliberation. Lyra, Dr. Voss, and Air were escorted to a waiting area while the council debated. Hours passed in tense silence, with Lyra occasionally reassuring Air through the neural interface that they had done everything possible to present the truth. Finally, they were summoned back to the chamber. The arbiter stood at the center of the dais, the crystalline facets of their form reflecting the light in patterns that seemed to convey the gravity of the moment. After thorough deliberation, the Galactic Council has reached a decision regarding the entity known historically as the Void Reaper, now identified as Air. The arbiter announced, "The Council acknowledges that significant new evidence has been presented that challenges long-held assumptions about this being's nature and intentions." A ripple of murmurs passed through the chamber as the arbiter continued, "While we cannot dismiss the real suffering and destruction that has occurred in encounters with this entity, we must also acknowledge that these encounters have been characterized by fear, misunderstanding, and preemptive aggression from both sides. The cycle of violence that has persisted for centuries benefits no one and threatens the peace and stability that this council was formed to preserve." The arbiter's voice grew more solemn. "Therefore, by majority vote, the council rules as follows. The entity known as Air will not be subject to execution or permanent imprisonment as previously demanded. Instead, it will be placed under the joint custodianship of the Terrorized Institute of Xenobiology, specifically under the supervision of Lyra Callahan and Dr. Alara Voss, who have demonstrated both the means and the will to communicate peacefully with it." Relief flooded through Lyra, but the arbiter wasn't finished. "This custodianship will include strict monitoring and regular reports to the council. Additionally, Air will be required to assist, when possible and safe, with stellar phenomena that threaten inhabited systems, a return to the role its species once played. In recognition of the genuine grievances of affected species, a reparation program will be established, with details to be determined in subsequent sessions." The arbiter looked directly at Air's containment vessel. "Does the entity accept these terms?" Through the neural interface, Air's response was immediate and clear. "I accept. I will help. I will demonstrate that understanding is possible between different kinds." The decision was not met with universal approval. Several representatives, particularly those from species with the deepest grievances, voiced objections. Commander Krell and his mercenaries left the chamber in obvious disgust. But the majority seemed satisfied with the compromise, recognizing it as a step toward a more enlightened approach to interspecies relations. As the session concluded, Lyra found herself surrounded by curious representatives eager to learn more about her communication with Air. Even Commander Valdez, who had been skeptical throughout, approached with newfound respect. "You've changed galactic history today," Valdez told her quietly. "I'm not sure if I entirely agree with the Council's decision, but I acknowledge the courage it took to stand up for what you believed was right." "I thank you, Commander," Lyra replied, genuinely touched by the admission. Dr. Voss, meanwhile, was already discussing with Council scientists the potential applications of the neural interface technology for other previously uncommunicative species. The ripple effects of their discovery were just beginning to spread. As they prepared to return to Terova with Air, now officially under their custody. Lyra took a moment to communicate privately with the creature that had so dramatically altered the course of her life. "We did it," she told Air through the interface. "It won't be easy going forward, but you have a chance now, a chance to show the galaxy who you really are." Air's response came with a warmth that Lyra had come to recognize as affection. "Because of you, Lyra, you saw beyond fear. You gave what no other has given in millennia. Benefit of doubt, trust. That's what friends do," Lyra replied simply. "Friends," Air repeated, the concept clearly new but welcome. "Yes, friends." The return to Terrova marked the beginning of a new chapter. With the backing of the Galactic Council, Lyra's sanctuary was expanded into a full research facility, with Air as both subject and collaborator. Dr. Voss joined permanently, bringing her expertise and additional funding from the Institute. The first months were challenging. News of the Void Reaper's presence on Terrova drew everything from protesters to pilgrims. From scientists eager to study Air to security experts convinced catastrophe was inevitable. But as time passed and no disasters occurred, the furor gradually subsided. Air thrived under Lyra's care. As its trust grew, so did its willingness to share knowledge about the cosmos that had been gathered over millennia of solitary travel. Astronomers and physicists from across the galaxy came to consult with the being once feared as a harbinger of destruction, now valued as a repository of cosmic wisdom. More remarkably, Air began to exhibit behaviors that Lyra could only describe as domestic. The fearsome predator that had once terrorized entire star systems now followed Lyra around the sanctuary like an oversized pet, its sensory pits pulsing with contentment. At night, it would settle near her quarters, maintaining a protective vigil that Lyra found both touching and amusing. One evening, about a year after the council hearing, Lyra sat on the observation deck of the expanded sanctuary, watching the stars emerge in the twilight sky. Air coiled beside her, its form now permanently altered to a more streamlined shape that better suited life on a planetary surface. "Do you ever miss it?" Lyra asked, gesturing toward the stars. "The freedom to roam the cosmos, to go wherever you pleased?" Through the neural interface, which they still use despite Air's improving ability to communicate directly through controlled empathic projection, came the thoughtful response. "Miss some aspects. Freedom of movement, stellar energies, but loneliness. Do not miss, isolation lasted millennia. Companionship is new, preferred." Lyra smiled, reaching out to touch Air's obsidian scales, which rippled with gentle light at her contact. "I'm glad. I'd miss you if you left." "Not leaving," Air assured her. "Found home here, with you," as if to emphasize the point. Air shifted closer, the appendage that Lyra had come to think of as its head settling gently in her lap. The being that had once been the most feared predator in the galaxy now dozed contentedly under her touch. As domesticated as any house pet, yet infinitely more complex and wondrous. Dr. Voss, who had been working in the lab, emerged onto the deck and smiled at the sight. "Still hard to believe sometimes, isn't it?" she commented, taking a seat nearby. "That the legendary Void Reaper now naps in your lap and eats treats from your hand?" "Life is full of surprises," Lyra replied, gently stroking the pulsing sensory pits that now glowed with a peaceful blue light. "Sometimes the most feared creatures just need someone to see past the legends and find the truth beneath." Air stirred slightly, projecting a warm sense of agreement and contentment that both women could now perceive without the interface. The three of them sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars that had once been Air's only companions and were now just one part of a much richer existence. In the facility archives, the official designation for Air had been updated from the Void Reaper, apex predator of the cosmos, to something that Lyra thought captured the truth far better. Air, last of the stellar shepherds, friend of Terova. It was a small change in wording, but it represented a monumental shift in understanding, proof that even the most entrenched fears could be overcome with courage, compassion, and the willingness to look beyond the surface. And every night, when Lyra retired to her quarters, the most feared creature in galactic history would curl up at the foot of her bed, its sensory pits dimming to a soft glow as it settled into peaceful rest. No longer alone in the vast emptiness of space, but home at last among friends.